Hello and welcome to We Women Want. This is our weekly show where we discuss women's issues. We rake up issues relating to breast cancer, domestic abuse, laws that help women, work-life balance. We talk to women CEOs, we talk to acid attack victims, those who suffer domestic abuse. So this is actually becoming a sort of support group where we hold conversations that affect more or less every one of us in our life. And also we celebrate some of the winners and those who help society. Today on the show we are going to be discussing reproductive health. I have experts from the IVF field and from high-risk OBGYN. Joining me is Dr. Jayashree Sundar. She is a director OBGYN at the Madhukar Rainbow Hospital, Children's Hospital. And as one of her colleagues said, I think she is the busiest gynecologist in Delhi, delivering I think about 80 children a month. Is that correct? Almost. And also joining us is Tanya Bakshi Rohtki. She is lead consultant of reproductive medicine on IVF and oncofertility. Tanya, in fact, she started the Max platelet-rich plasma therapy for endometrial and ovarian rejuvenation. And her work at IVF has really been good. We've had a show with her earlier where we've had patients come and talk about it. And where there is no hope, she brings hope. So in that sense, it's good to have both of you in this conversation. Dr. Jayashree, if we can begin with, reproductive health. I'll go on to the difficulties in conceiving with Tanya. But generally, when a person comes to you, what are the tips that you would tell an expectant mother?
When we talk about the reproductive health of a girl, so from the age she attains her puberty, it goes on till her menopause. There are puberty problems, postmenopausal problems. But today let's focus on the reproductive age group, right? A girl becomes potentially reproductive from the time she starts her menstrual cycles, and we are born with a fixed reserve of eggs. We don't have, we cannot keep on producing. What we are born is what we are going to utilize for our reproductive potential. So, so there are a lot of challenges for women with the changing economic scenario, with the changing expectations that women want, right? So that has created more problems. Some problems can be solved very easily just with the knowledge, and that is what I think our focus as gynecologists should be, to start telling them that you have to start early, avoid the processed food, exercise should be an integral part of our life. Girls should know how to maintain the optimal BMI. There should be stress-free cycles because our hormones have a very diurnal variation. The sleep is very important, but unfortunately we live in a 24/7, I would say 48/7 world, right? Everybody is super active all the time. News comes like food instantly, right? So there is no buffering mechanism for the body that is needed, right? And that is causing a lot of trials and tribulations in a woman's health, and it is an exhaustive topic. We cannot discuss it over a time, but definitely the take-home message that we should give women today is that reproductive health care should start from the time, from a very early age, when to introduce processed food in a child's life is as important for her future reproductive health. I say that I tell this to all expecting mothers that when you have a child, the first thing I've started telling them is breastfeeding for 6 months, no salt, no sugar for a year of life. Because you introduce the taste, you create the problems, right? And then we say, mera bachcha nahi khata hai, they don't eat if they don't get this food. So that is because we have introduced that in their life early on, right? So we should be balancing it out, and the change in culture and approach is most important. And less rest of it, I think when they have fertility issues, then obviously the fertility specialists chip in, right?
So we have the fertility specialist right here, chip in.
So I'll just add into what Dr. Jayashree said as well. What we say now is we are what our mothers ate as well. So a healthy mom will have also a healthy child. So just as it's important to focus on the health pre-conception, pregnancy and post, and right from the early adolescence, as Jayashree is saying, we want to find that balance between a complete harmony between the body, mind, soul. We're seeing nutritional deficiency. As Dr. Jayashree said, they're either obese or they're even malnourished, very, very thin, anorexic. So when we say we want someone to be an optimal BMI, we're usually talking of a BMI between 20 to 24. Sometimes we have the fad. We want to all look like supermodels. So we are not eating the right food and we're getting extremely anorexic. That's where our hormones start to have an interplay. Our mental health, a lot of anxiety we are seeing, a lot of stresses we are seeing. And there's a lot what the society expects from us, we expect from ourselves, and sometimes it becomes a vicious cycle. And then it's difficult to break through. What I would also like to say that almost everybody resonates with PCOD. What also is a myth
PCOD
sometimes
is polycystic ovarian
disease, right? So where you have a hormone imbalance. But what I'd like to say is that not every young girl who has irregular cycles has PCOD. So there could be multiple factors which are there. And what we are seeing now, that there's a trend of declining fertility very early on in life. Sometimes we're seeing patients where they think, oh, it's a hormone imbalance and I have PCOD because that's what they've Googled, and they think it'll get better, but they don't realize it's actually one of the first signs of a declining fertility very early on. So very important to meet the right doctors, to get the right guidance, which is obviously not Dr. Google. We are here to guide them and give them that information. So each individual is assessed. Not every 20-year-old will have the same fertility. Not every 30-year-old will have the same fertility.
I see.
And as Dr. Jayashree said, we have a fixed egg pool. We have to optimize that pool. We want to make sure that we do everything. We are empowered. Each of us, we want to make sure that we have our careers going. We can optimize our motherhood. We can optimize our social life. And it is very much possible. I think if we empower the women, give them the right knowledge, give them the right support, and help them so that they're able to very easily, in a nice flow, manage all together without attention.
So if I've got her right, you're saying that, the stressful lives we lead, also affect our fertility.
Yes.
Yeah, you see what happens is now everything is at the click of a button, but health is not at the click of a button, right? So because you don't give the body to time to buffer even news, even simple things. So what is happening now is, women, we have an hormone estrogen, right? So the feminine hormone is the estradiol. But because of the stress, the testosterone level is going up in women. So we have the more malish hormone estrone. I mean, if we say it. So that's why you see PCOD has become a very hyped diagnosis. So when they come to me and say, they don't come and tell I have this problem. They come and tell, doctor, I have been told I have PCOD. So then I tell them, even if you have PCOD, for diabetes, the first thing we offer is lifestyle change. So I tell them, remove all the M's in your life. The maids, the machines, the malls, the mobiles, and if
and
not
the men,
men later,
Men they can
men, and the McDonald's, the Maggies, I mean, all the wrong M's we have inculcated in our life, and that's not helping. And we Asians are a very insulin resistant population. That is why we are known as the diabetic capital of the world, right? Not only for the world, we are the diabetic capital. And we don't exercise as much. We take all the fats from the West, but we don't exercise the way they do. We eat their burgers, but we don't exercise. We don't think that sports is an important activity. Now people are changing, parents are changing. But when we were young, or when we had young children, we always thought our child should be the best in school, right? Number acha aana chahiye.
Yeah.
In that process, you forget that exercising is so essential, right? It keeps your hormones under control. Sleeping at the right time. The hormones are best at the morning time. But 90% of Delhi is sleeping when it's morning time, right? So all this is changing all that is changing our hormonal milieu. So that's affecting us.
Even there are studies, as Dr. Jayashree said, for shift workers. So when you're working late shifts, when you're working night shifts, their fertility is lower. So there is a science, because the way the hormones reach their peak and the way they come down is different during the day and different during the night. That's how there's a mechanism, internal mechanism of our body as well. And we're pushing it to a certain extent. So I think just as we say that we're able to control our body to a certain amount, there are things which we can't change. For example, age. If I'm 40 today, I can't change being 40. But I can change my lifestyle. I can work on my mental health. I can work on having that positive mindset, calming myself. There was a time where we hardly saw any diabetes or hypertension in young women. We're seeing so much of it now. We're seeing young kids obesity being a problem, stress, depression, all of that increasing. And it's up to us to empower them with the right knowledge and help them with ways and means to make it easier and better. Because if you're healthy at the start of the reproductive cycle, you will have a beautiful pregnancy. For example, we all talk about having a lovely, 9 months, natural delivery. Everything is easier when things are in place. If you're in a positive mindset, you're healthy, the right weight, you don't have any comorbidities, for example, it could be diabetes, hypertension, weight issue, thyroid issue. If everything is controlled in the right way, then it is smooth sailing.
Okay. So for IVF, can you explain what is IVF to the viewer, and does it, a person with comorbidities, can they go through IVF and have, one is of course genetically that you can't have a child, for whatever reason, but if you have various illnesses, you can still
absolutely. So I think IVF, the word is in vitro fertilization, literally came as the test tube baby, where we're helping create a baby, which is an embryo in the lab. Now there are various reasons why a person may need it. It could be because of female factors. So for example, either the woman's tubes, the fallopian tubes that we say, could be blocked for whatever reason. There could be a problem, she's not having good eggs, or it is a problem with the man where there's an issue with his sperm count, sperm motility, or usually, most of the cases, there's a combination of factors between the man and the woman that they're not able to conceive naturally and they require assistance from our side. It's not always that a couple is entirely healthy when they seek IVF. Also, people with comorbidities. For example, I do a lot of work with cancer survivors, which we say oncofertility. So for someone who's undergoing something like a chemotherapy or a radiation, they still have that desire. And there is a possibility for them to have kids of their own, be it for a man or be it for a woman. This is where we come into play. And what we do essentially is, so for a woman, how does she get pregnant? Every month, she releases an egg. And when she releases an egg, this is called ovulation. And during that time, when they have intercourse and with the sperm fertilizing the egg in the body, they create a beautiful baby. The embryo sits in the womb and develops right. Now, if they're not able to do that, so for example, either the tubes are blocked, that process wouldn't happen. So we would aid and assist them. So in IVF, injections are given whereby the eggs are grown and they're harvested in the lab, which is then in the lab mixed with the husband's sperm or a partner. If a woman today, as a single woman, can also become a mother, so she can have a donor sperm. So the sample is used to create a baby in the lab called an embryo, which is then implanted back within her. Now, there are some women who have a lot of medical issues and it's not safe for them to carry a pregnancy. That's when surrogacy comes in as well. And then they could have their embryos transplanted into another healthy woman to help them aid with a pregnancy. There are some women with genetic issues. For example, if she's born without a womb, there's no way she can carry a pregnancy. Again, surrogacy being an option. There are certain illnesses where either it is so high risk, it could be a cardiac problem, it could be a multitude of problems where it's not safe for her to carry a pregnancy. Again, in those cases, we have the option of surrogacy. Now, for some people, the eggs run out. So we know, as Dr. Jayashree said, there's a limited pool of eggs that we are born with. So at fertility at 20s is the best. It goes down in the 30s. And it is very, very less when you're 40. So the optimal fertility time is in the late 20s to the early 30s. But we're seeing a huge trend change. Mostly women coming to us, either mid-30s or late 30s.
So I say it is the new 30 is the new 20 now. So we accept 30 as the new 20 if somebody comes at that age. So I would like to point here what Tanya said about fertility. We have to be sure that the woman is medically fit when she is conceiving a baby. Because when, see, the first thing is if you go abroad where IVF is sometimes given free, they will say if you don't optimize your BMI, we don't make you pregnant, right? But in India, because of limitation, because of the money spent, sometimes it's not optimized correctly. Then when they become pregnant, it becomes a challenge for the delivering obstetrician because you land up with so many premature births, high risk in pregnancy. The oldest I have delivered with an IVF is 48. By the time she delivered, she was 49. She did very well. I mean, she was fit. as a 48, but obviously, but then you are worried about such girls, right? Because at 48, when somebody is pregnant, the body undergoes a lot of changes. So as Tanya said, picking the right person for an IVF or assisted fertility is also as equally important. And I have seen people getting fed up, landing up with IVF. Some of Tanya's patients also, I know that they have had IVF because they were not getting pregnant for 5 years, delivered within 9 months, pregnant again naturally, and I've delivered them again. So many times when the hope is lost, you do want to give them an answer, and it really works well. But also, after you have given them that help, they conceive themselves also. So we see both ends of the spectrum, right? So fertility is a big challenge. I'm not saying having babies is the only thing of life, right? Many times, even my daughter questions me, Mummy, there are so many babies in India, you don't need babies to have more babies. So I said, but if somebody desires, to fulfill their potential, I think they have the right to understand and be empowered with knowledge about what is correct for them. And that's what our focus should be.
Choosing the right treatment
and time also. I want to take a break and come back and talk about the timing. For instance, we talked about a 40-year-old being pregnant. What is the danger in getting pregnant late? And if someone wants to freeze their eggs when they're over 40, would you advise that or not? Quick break. We're going to come back and talk about that. Hello and welcome back to We Women Want. We are here discussing women's reproductive health. Tanya, would getting pregnant in their 40s is a late pregnancy, I guess?
Absolutely, it is late.
So if someone comes to you who's over 40 and says, I want you to, have people asked you
Absolutely,
for help?
This is, I think, a very common trend now.
Really?
Because by the time they're getting set with their life and by the time they realize that they want to have their motherhood, it is in the late 30s or in the early 40s. And we have enough women who are conceiving. So it is a very common question. But what we have to realize is often they compare their fertility to someone in their 30s, which is not true. So what is the success? So for someone who's 35, their chances of having a conception are much higher. So the success rate, having a live born baby with IVF for a 35-year-old would be as much as 50 to 60%.
Yeah.
But for someone who's 40, we're looking at barely 15 to 20%. And again, as Dr. Jayashree said, first optimize that time. Sometimes then they are so panicked that they don't want to take that time to even optimize, be it a simple sugar, their weight, their overall health. You need to be fit because the whole point of coming for treatment is that you have a lovely 9 months of pregnancy. Then comes the risk. Often they will just say, we want to have IVF and we want to get pregnant, be it with their own eggs or be it with a donor egg. A pregnancy at 40 with the risks, which Dr. Jayashree would highlight, is much more than a pregnancy. Even a 38-year-old pregnant versus a 46-year-old pregnant are entirely different.
Okay.
The medical risks are different, risk for the mom, risk for the baby, they're all different.
Okay.
Now you spoke about egg freezing. The right time to freeze your eggs is in the early 30s. It is also not just the time. As I said, each individual is different. So you must come and get your own fertility assessed. Because what we know with egg freezing, it is different than having an embryo, which is a basic difference. The egg is a single cell. It's very fragile. Versus an embryo, which is multi-cell, made of the woman's egg and a man's sperm creating a baby, which is an embryo. So one is, when are you freezing it and how many eggs are you freezing? Sometimes women come and they say, oh, I have frozen 6 eggs. Is that good enough? Actually, you need a good number, between 15 to 20 eggs to be frozen. You must be at the right center where the embryology team and the lab is so good that your success rate, because once we've frozen the egg, the process starts when you're ready to have a baby, would be then to defreeze, which we call thawing the eggs. They must survive the process. And there's attrition at every level. Then we would do a process called where we pick up the sperm, inject it into the egg, called ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Post that again, there's an attrition to form an embryo. Then there are stages of the embryo, a day 2 embryo, a day 3, a day 5, and then comes the implantation to the success rate.
Okay.
So if we have maybe 15 eggs frozen for a 35-year-old, almost double the number for a 42-year-old. So you see, one is the number, one is the quality.
Age also.
You need both.
Okay. But the difficulties in a late pregnancy is in a natural pregnancy. A lot of people say, you know, that they're worried for the child, may not be a normal child, may have problems.
So, yeah, see, as I was saying that when you are 25, since your eggs are also younger, right? So, if having a genetic problem in the baby is say 1 in 1500, but if you are 40, that same Down syndrome is 1 in 100. So, we have to understand, even in a natural pregnancy at that age, there is a very high risk to have genetic problems. But luckily, nowadays, with the advancement in our technologies and the way we scan our babies, even at 12 weeks, we are able to identify whether this baby is going to have a Down syndrome or not. So, there are 3 levels of testing. One is by scan, but once somebody is above 35, we do offer them a non-invasive prenatal testing, which is a blood test in which we do the mother's blood and detect for Down syndrome and other things. And if any of these comes positive, we offer them an invasive test, right? So, obviously, the person who goes through all these tests should understand that if the result comes positive, if the genetic test comes positive, then where do I stand? I have had one instance when a 43-year-old conceived. She went to some other state, not in this state. She got pregnant with her own eggs. She was too happy. But when she came back to me at 12 weeks, we didn't find the baby to be okay, right? So when I told her, both parents were shattered. The husband was 46, the wife was 42. She was very happy that she had conceived with her eggs. And then we had to terminate the pregnancy because it came out positive for Down syndrome. So that expectation of what to expect when you're pregnant at 40 and the knowledge is very important. I mean, I will never forget the face of the parents when I told them that this baby is not okay. The scan says that something is wrong. And when the test was done, it was Down syndrome positive. So I'm not saying all Down syndrome babies are bad. I mean, you do have the good, but we live in a country where we are not supported economically, financially, right? No special schools. I mean, even normal children are abused. So having special children has its own problems, right? So all this awareness has to be an integral part of every woman's teaching. So when a woman comes at 35 and talks about fertility and I tell her, yeah, you know, the fertile age is best, she tells me, oh, I wish somebody told me this at that age, you know, when I would have been more receptive and maybe arranged my life better, you know, and I think that's very important.
In fact, that's what we began by saying, you know, you should be aware to make the right choices and don't go get your work-life balance sorted if you want to be a mother.
And you know, adding on to the genetic tests, so IVF has specialized tests called pre-implantation genetic testing, where we can test the embryo for things like the chromosomal number abnormality like Down syndrome, because when we look at an embryo, we grade it, but it doesn't tell us about the genetics. But we have the technology now, a test called PGTA, where cells are taken out and they are checked before we implant. But again, we must realize each has a success to it. But this is again an advancement in IVF to help the older mums to select the right embryo genetically.
But okay, now from moms to menopause, you know, because that's something that is also not talked about much. People, you know.
Yeah. So menopause, when I was in UK 20 years, I used to wonder, why do these women have so much symptoms? Why are they complaining about menopause, right? Then I used to look at our mothers. You know, I've never heard my mother complaining about any problems, right? So then she's 79, my mother, and still she never complains about anything. Then I realized there are certain things which is changing in a woman's health, right? So previously, when women were 49, 50, their life, they were not stressed about a child's education, other things, their work. They were only doing one sort of work, right? Now, with the multitude of effects, what is happening is menopause is also not happening easily to women. And there is a lot of hormonal paradigm shift, you know. I mean, it's a big shift. You lose out on all your estrogen, your hormones go for a toss, your skin doesn't look the way you want it to look or you think it should look, your dryness increases, your sexual function goes down, and your irritability goes up a lot. And if you're not taking care of your health or exercising, you become hypertensive when you reach the perimenopausal age group, and it takes 4-5 years long period of your time.
It's even a longer spell,
Yeah. So, and it's not easy for a woman, especially when she's balancing again the work, the life, the family, everything. So, I think there is help available. I mean, we can do some non-hormonal medications. We can do certain exercises, some meditations which helps in these symptoms. And there are medication available, but the choice, there was a lot of hype about HRT should not be given at all to women.
What is HRT?
HRT is hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
So it was almost shunned at one point, but that study said that the women's selection was not good. So we have now come back again and said if a woman is supervised correctly and if she needs help for her menopause, it should be given to her, and that help is available. In fact, the gynecologists have a menopausal society, you know, where we have this teaching to say what to offer a woman in menopause, and help is definitely available. But I think having a good social environment, you know,
Yes,
I think girls are the best friends, I feel, for menopause.
Yeah.
It's so again a joke made by my daughter, why men don't pause or menopause, only why menopause. I said they also go through the changes, but it is much worse on women, right? But I think having a good social life, good friends also
Yes.
makes a big difference to the to your response to menopause.
And I think we just talked a lot about fertility and the peak age. What I'd like to add on is also remember your bone has a peak age.
Ah.
So 30s is not only the best time for you to get your reproductive health in order, but also get your overall health in order. Your peak bone mass is coming at that point. So if you're at the right weight, you're exercising well, you're eating well, you've got less of the trans fats, you've got more of the nuts, the legumes. And we know the Indian diet is fantastic. We used to have a time where everybody, you know, right from the yogis, we've got the best diet in the world. So if we just eat well, we exercise well, we sleep well, we're going to make our menopause much better. We are living longer. So there was a time where our lifespan and life expectancy was less, 50s and 60s. Now we're living up to 80s and 90s, and a very active life. We want to play bridge. We want to go out at 80. We want to be going out with our girlfriends.
Correct.
And we want to have a lovely life. And I think we have to keep that in mind as well, that our overall health is in our hands, starting from an early adolescent age to our reproductive age, to our menopause.
Okay.
And we optimize all together. What I'd like to also add on is
Quickly,
screening.
we are totally out now. Huh?
Please do make sure you're getting yourself tested, you're getting yourself screened, getting the right vaccination, right from cervical cancer vaccine for the women to get screened for cervical cancer, for getting screening for breast cancer, for your fertility. Seek out help from all of us here. We're only here to guide and help you be healthy and happy.
Quickly on the screening bit that she picked up, what would you recommend? How often should we do the screening, the pap
So
smear?
all the pap smear every 3 years, at least every 2 to 3 years once you have started your sexual life. All girls from the age of 9 should be vaccinated. We should also screen menopausal women for endometrial cancers. That has gone up a lot. I mean, I have dealt with 3 to 4 cancers within 2 months, the last 2 months. So as we live longer, uterine cancers are increasing, cervical cancer. So screening is very important, and mammography, not before 40. And if there is a family history, the woman should be told about the lifestyle changes, and they should be screened, because these are all treatable cancers, and early detection gives a 100% success.
Also self-examination. Please look after yourself, examine. You know your body best. So I think if we are empowered and we know how to look after our health, seek out, get a health checkup, you will be happy and healthy.
Be aware. I think that is the main thing. Post-menopause and your 80s and 70s are in your hands, but they're in your hands when you're 30. So listen to this conversation and live well and be healthy and happy. Thank you so much for this, both of you, for this conversation. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.